Laing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I just want to first thank you so much for inviting me to be able to be a part of your Black History Month program, to be a part of the service. This means a lot, and I feel very honored to be able to do this. What we heard earlier from the poems and the clip of the inventors and the things that were said earlier ties really well into what I want to talk about today. And I forget the name of the young lady. I think her name is Cece, the one who did the poem, who tied in love and like mine. Thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm excited. Today, I want to share something with you focused on declaring your own Declaration of Independence, your personal Declaration of Independence. Now, we know what that means, right? So really, it signifies freedom. And if you know anything about the history, right, of the Declaration of Independence, we understand that it was America trying to be free of the colonial taxes and be free of the control of Britain. And so today I want to talk about your freedom and how to claim that, to actually live it, okay? And I'm going to give you 3 steps. So if you have some pens or paper, pencil, please make sure that you write down these 3 steps and look over them from time to time if you find them helpful. So I'm going to go through 3 steps for how to claim it, okay? And the first thing I want to do is talk about how we have been experiencing how we've been experiencing social, racial experiences recently. So we know obviously clearly about the history of America. But recently, during this whole 2020, 2021, things have been becoming more revealed to the masses around the world and where we stand in regards to our racial conditions, our relationships regarding when it comes to our racial conditions. And so this is a perfect time to really reflect on these 3 steps. The first step is to develop knowledge and understanding. So many times people feel confused about what to do, and they continue to utilize the same behavior patterns that they've used for years and for generations. But what I've learned is that you can't really evolve as a person and as a community and as a greater society unless you're willing to do something different. And to do something different, you have to embrace gaining more knowledge and understanding. And that is what has always been proven time and time again to change our conditions in our own personal lives, in our communities, and around the world. So the first step, you have to educate yourself. You know, we're having Black History Month, and you stated earlier that this was the first year that you've done Black history every day throughout Black History Month. I'm glad that change was made. But going forward, Black history has to be a part of your daily life because you live it. And let me explain what I mean by that. See, in this society, we are always impacted by, if you're of African ancestry, you're always impacted by what racism looks like, what discrimination looks like. It's part of the social conditioning, and it's part of our understanding of how society works in regards to stereotypes and things of that sort. Many people understand that it's possible to have some type of experience with discrimination at some point. But because you're living that every day as something in the back of your mind that you might end up experiencing, then you have to have Black history a part of your life every day, because that knowledge of your history allows you to walk with a certain level of confidence because of the understanding that comes with it. And so you will no longer fear discrimination as a possibility. You will no longer fear racism because you have knowledge and understanding, because you understand that it exists. You understand that it exists, but it won't impact you deeply, because knowledge and understanding protects you from that, because it gives you a certain level of confidence that nothing else can do. And as Christians, what you understand is that when you walk around the world with love inside of you, right, and believing that you have to have faith and that God is going to take care of everything, it's the same thing you have to have when you're carrying around the history of your ancestors, right? Because in your DNA, in your bloodline, lives leadership. That is the history of people of African ancestry. And when you study the history, you will see the beauty of the strength and the courage. You will see the beauty of the faith, the persistence, the forgiveness that has always been in the DNA, which is why our ancestors were able to survive being in the predicament of being enslaved. So it's about understanding how it is and what it is, and look at it from a lens of true understanding so that you can carry around confidence. Do you know the history of the diaspora? Do you know anything outside of North American Black history? Do you know about South America, the Caribbean, and the continent of Africa? Do you know? And if you don't know, then you understand that it is time for you and us as a community to start gaining more knowledge and understanding in order to uplift yourself personally and your community and society. But we cannot begin to do the real work if we don't understand and if we don't know. Change is made when you know what to do, but you don't know what to do unless you have the knowledge. So knowledge and understanding is key. It inspires you in such a way that you will walk with your head high and you will be empowered to do the work. See, Bevy and Dave was created because I had the knowledge and the understanding that Black history was not a history of victims, but more of a history of victors. People who utilize the love inside of them, the leadership inside of them to continue to contribute regardless of their circumstances. Can you imagine being in a space of overwhelming oppression where the laws are against you and you still choose to contribute your best? That's powerful. And it takes a certain level of strength and discipline and faith and courage and commitment and love to do it. People did all kinds of things to contribute their best. You know, Garrett Morgan, the creator, the inventor of the gas mask and the three-way traffic signal. Let me show you what he did, or let me tell you. So he understood his social conditions, that he would be discriminated against, right? So he understood what he had to do, and he was smart. He ended up hiring someone else to kind of display his gas mask, to show how it works, because he knew at that time, if they knew he was of African ancestry, they wouldn't buy it. And he was right. When he got someone else to showcase his work, it sold like hotcakes to the firemen, to the fire departments. But the moment they realized it was him, sales stopped. But I need you to understand and see how even though they knew these social conditionings, they still contributed their best. They still invented. They still found ways to be helpful. Do you know Garrett Morgan, when he created that gas mask, with the love that was inside of him, because of what God put in him to do, he rescued minors. He put on his gas mask, went into the danger zone, rescued minors to showcase not just how it worked, but to be helpful. And of course, we know it's so like hotcakes, because nothing else existed quite like it. But I give you that example to remember and to understand that the history will give you a lot of power, because it empowers you, because it inspires you, because that is what knowledge and understanding can do like no other. So as we celebrate Black History Month, we have to understand that it's a part, if you are of African ancestry, it is a part of your DNA. It is who you are. So don't disassociate yourself with it, from it. You have to live in it and be proud of that and do your part so that you continue on that legacy. To understand that that is part of who you are. You're born to do. You are born to be great. And if you are not of African ancestry, you will still be inspired by the story, because nothing is more powerful than seeing and learning from someone who has been through the worst of it, and they still get through, and they still do their part, and they still do their best because of the love within, and because they choose to follow what's been placed in them to do, using their talents and gifts for the greater good. The second point I want to make is perspective. Perspective. See, your perspective is shaped by your perception, okay? So how you feel about something is based on how you perceive something to be, which is why, once again, it's important for you to have knowledge and understanding, because you'll be able to know what's false and what's true. How you perceive things to be is going to follow your actions. Like your actions, what you do, how you walk around in the world is based on how you perceive things to be. So if you perceive your life to be limitless, then it will be. And if you perceive yourself to be limited, then you will be. And since we are speaking here amongst Christians, then we understand then that what you think, you will be, you will become. What you think, you will become. So you have to be very wise about how you think, and think about why you think what you think. This is important because for a long time, due to the abuse, because of the abuse of racism and discrimination towards Black people around the world, it has made a major impact into the spirits, into the minds of the people who experience it. And you have to acknowledge that, because it's part of your experience. See, that's the macro level. But if you can be shaped by what goes on the micro level within your home, being raised as a child, then you know you're being shaped too by society as you go about. Recently in the news, because of COVID, because there's so many people of African ancestry falling victims or passing away to this virus, people have been learning more about why it affects the Black community more. Part of it is the stress that comes from the constant pressures of racism and discrimination and oppression and the redlining, where people were forced to live in environments that were polluted and still live there generations later. I'm saying that to say this. It's important for you to understand that although we have these social conditionings, you have to remember to not allow yourself to fall not just victim, right, to the racial social issues, but to remember how it impacts you so that you can understand why your perspective is what it is. I'll give an example of that. When we talk about colorism, and when we talk about things that continue to linger on generationally amongst the people who have been oppressed, that's an example, right? That people continue to experience and perceive things one way. But we have the power to change our perspective. We have the power to do that. There's abuse of racism, discrimination, oppression around the world for people who are of African ancestry. But it doesn't have to live within you. With the knowledge and understanding, you can use that as power and strength to rise above it. With Bevy and Dave, there were a few people when I was starting out who understood the social conditionings as they've been regarding race and discrimination. And some people didn't really believe, right, in the idea of Bevy and Dave, because Bevy and Dave toys focus on building leaders through the stories of Black history. But their mind was limited because of the social condition, because of how they understood racism and discrimination. So they couldn't see it moving past a certain point. And some of them didn't believe in it because in their mind, they feel like, well, what is Black history to the masses? What is Black history to the masses? So you can't go based on how you perceive the world to be. You have to go based on what it is. And what it is a history that is powerful, that can be a blessing to everyone. And although we know that racism and discrimination exists, it doesn't have to live in you every day. Because, see, why should the victim live with the shame? The victim should never live with the shame of something that's not their fault. You're supposed to be empowered. And your job is to understand when you are acting out of fear, because you fear racism and discrimination, and when you're acting out of faith. So remember that when you go about your day and you go about your life, that you go with your head up high, feeling strong, because you know what lives in you is not just the love of God, but also the people He brought before you. And that's the people who survived and thrived for you to be where you are today, who gave you the opportunities. And you should be very proud, because everybody that lives in this country have been blessed by the hard work, by the sacrifice of your ancestors who chose to help make our society a place for opportunity for everyone. your civil rights is thanks to them. Don't allow stereotypes to be in you. Don't live up to the stereotypes. It is up to us to make sure that the children, the next generation, understand that they shouldn't be bound by stereotypes, because that is not who they are. And they should not be defined by any negative stereotype, but instead be empowered by the truth. And that truth, right, is what we can see in history. The strength, the courage, the power, the faith, the commitment, the perseverance, the forgiveness. The last point in regards to maintaining or claiming your freedom is self-love. You must have self-love. You have to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you cannot have the capacity to love others. You cannot have the capacity to do for others, to do for the world. You can't expect for people to treat you with love if you don't love yourself. Because see, we all know you can only give what you have. And you're going to get what you've given. So if you love yourself, you can give love. And you can do your part. And you can do your best, regardless of the things that are coming at you. You have to embrace your heritage and love that part of who you are. If you have any thoughts in your mind that you should not be associated with things that make you feel awkward, then it's time for you to start to reflect on why you feel the way you feel. Embrace your heritage. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. In our unique society as Black Americans, right, as African Americans, we have this thing because we had to reinvent ourselves every generation. So we went from being Africans, right, to the point where now, generations later, no one understands the culture of Africa because they weren't allowed to keep the culture or the language. And so now there's this complete separation because now you have generations. You understand? Okay. So when that happened, you have generations of people that don't even understand, okay, that they're actually African. So then we have these name changes. You go from color to Negro to Black to African American. And when people don't understand who they are, it's very difficult to be your best self and to love yourself. And so I am saying that when it comes to self-love, it's not just loving yourself as who you are as a human being, but also loving that who you are as an African and embracing all African. When you meet someone from South America who are also descendants of people who were enslaved there, understand that you are them and they are you. The same for the Caribbeans and so forth. We're one. Different ships, different times, landed in different places. But it's about loving all of who we are. Think about why you think what you think. And the next time you go on vacation, when you go on vacation next time, think about visiting places that will help you gain more knowledge and understanding. Think about visiting different countries in Africa and embrace your heritage. Because part of the self-hate that has gone on for generations has been reflected, right? And it's been shown, not just through colorism, but disassociating yourself from the African DNA because you don't know what it is because some of you have never been there. And that's the way it's been in many families, in many communities. And so we have to give acknowledgement to that And that's part of self-love, okay? Another thing I want to talk about with self-love, to give another example of the beauty of your ancestors, is Robert Smalls. I don't know if you know about him. Raise your hand if you know who Robert Smalls is. I don't see any hands raised. But Robert Smalls was a remarkable human being. And he did an amazing thing where he and himself, like he literally took a ship in the middle of the night, like around 3, 4 a.m. And he had 16, 15 other people with him. And they escaped slavery together. I want you to look up Robert Smalls, because I'm not going to talk about his whole story, but this is what I want to say about him. When he went and escaped slavery, he ended up fighting with the North, right, in the Civil War. And he became an American hero, and he also became wealthy. And when he returned back, okay, to his former place where he was enslaved in North Carolina, that former slave owner was now in poverty, didn't have a home, didn't have anything. Robert Smalls, now having wealth, bought that house, and him and his children, family moved in. And the people who formerly enslaved him, he offered them a place to stay. He offered them a place to stay, and they moved in. And he fed them because of the forgiveness and love within him. And this is what lives in your DNA. The power of forgiveness and love and strength and courage and hope. This is our heritage, a very strong one. And so I hope that you would take out time to look up more about Robert Smalls' story, because it's very inspiring and it's very powerful. Because we have this condition where we still are reckoning with racism and discrimination, the history of slavery, but it doesn't have to live on us every day. We don't have to make it a part of our fiber, but we can make a part of our fiber. It's understanding how our ancestors was able to get through and how they still contribute their best despite it. So that you, right, us, and the next generation can contribute our best despite it. Because racism, discrimination, oppression does not belong on the victim. We can no longer live our lives worrying and thinking so much about how that may impact our daily lives. But we have to do our part to progress our communities and our society as a whole. And as we do our very best, then automatically society will get better as it has been. So I encourage everyone today to make sure that you choose to develop more knowledge and understanding so that you can be the best person that you can be. So that not only are you educated, but the next generation is educated and filled up with a lot of love and confidence so that they can be their very best selves. It's almost near impossible to be the best child of God if you don't love who you are. You have to love who you are in order to give love. And that's reflected in not just how you treat people, but how you choose to live your life and progress society as a whole. And make sure that no matter what, that your perspective is based on truth, not on stereotypes, but on truth. And lastly, make sure that loving yourself is a priority. Take care of yourself, mind, body, spirit, soul, so that you can be the best person that you can be, and so that we can be the best examples that we can be for the next generation. This is how we, as individuals and as communities and as a greater society in the world, is going to be the best possible us we can be. I want to thank everyone for taking out time to listen to me today, to listen to this Black history story. I really just wanted to focus more on how we as a community and as a society can be better. So thank you. I hope I was of any help.